According to Stats SA, 71% of children from female-led households are multidimensionally poor, compared to 53.6% from male-led households. Reports show that South African women on average earn 28% less than men, which is cause for the disproportionate levels of poverty in female-led households. Nearly 30% of working-aged women in South Africa are unemployed, compared to 25% of men. Women are also more likely to work in unregulated informal sectors or for no pay. Good morning and welcome to 91's Women in Investing series. I'm Ronwin Poole and I'm delighted to be joined by Sylvia Walker, financial planner, speaker and author of the book Smart Woman. Sylvia is passionate about empowering women to gain financial freedom and to grow their wealth. Sylvia, thank you so much for joining us today.
Wonderful. Thanks for having me, Ronan.
So we've heard these alarming stats, and I think it's the cause for such an important conversation like the single mother and money matters. I think to some degree we can all understand that there are psychological, financial, and emotional strains on single parents and their children. This series is aimed at women, but I think it's important to note that not all single-headed households are predominantly headed by women. There are men as well. So Sylvia, let's dive straight into it. What are some of the biggest challenges that single moms or single-headed households experience from a financial and an emotional perspective?
Ronan, I think that one of the biggest problems is that you're all alone. So if you compare the single parent household to one where there's a mother and a father or two adults, you're alone at the end of the day. So you've only got yourself to rely upon. When you look at it from the emotional side, it's tough raising kids. So there's no rule book, so nobody tells you what to do. You learn as you go along. You might not have that shoulder to cry on. You might not have that person to bounce things off. So that's on the sort of emotional side. On the financial side, you are it. There's no plan B. So if you lose your job, if something goes wrong, or you can't work, you can't earn money, there's no one else to rely upon. So I think it can be a very lonely space to be in, and often a very difficult space because you're drawing on your own resources all the time. As I say, you don't have that other person as a backup to you.
You are your own plan A and your own plan B.
You are your own plan A, plan B, plan C. You are it at the end of the day.
It's 2022, and we know that there are women who have chosen to be single mothers, and then there are those who are single mothers due to circumstances such as divorce or death. Are the financial implications different for women in either one of those scenarios, or are they exactly the same?
I think if you plan to be a single mother, and as you say, there are those women that make that choice. If you plan to be a single parent or single mother, then you probably have got the financial means to do it. It would be part of your planning. But if it happens by default, not through planning, then I think it can come as quite a surprise. So the financial implications could be quite different. Suddenly it's not just yourself that you have to take care of. Let's say you have an unwanted pregnancy. Suddenly there's somebody else to take care of. So I think there is quite a big difference in terms of the finances of those two situations.
Sylvia, what are some of the key components for a financial plan for a single mother?
So when we talk about financial planning, there's two main elements that you need to take care of. On the one hand, you need to protect your income. So you earn your income to buy a lifestyle. And if you look at a single parent household, there is only that one income. So it's a very vulnerable situation if something happened to that income. So a single parent would need to think about, what would happen if she perhaps lost her job, she was retrenched, she got ill, she couldn't work. If she died, how would her family maintain their lifestyle? So that's very important to consider. The other important aspect is investing. So we all have very different reasons why we would want to invest, goals and dreams, and there's a whole range there. But there's two crucial aspects that everybody needs to actually have in place, and particularly a single parent or a single mother. The first is an emergency fund. Things happen and things go wrong. We said at the beginning that you stand alone. You are your own plan A and plan B and plan C. What happened if your fridge packs up, for instance? Or what happens if you need a new car battery? I had to buy a new car battery. It was about a year ago. It cost me, I think, over R1,000. I nearly fainted for a car battery. So what happens if that happens and you don't have that emergency fund? You're going to dip into your credit card. You're going to have to knock on your ex-husband's door, cap in hand, which is obviously not desirable. Where are you going to get the money? So firstly, you need to have an emergency fund. And the second important reason for investing is for old age. And everybody needs to do that, and particularly single moms. You cannot expect that you're going to meet somebody along the way that's going to rescue you. You don't know where life will and how life will unfold. So from a financial planning perspective, as I say, you need to actually think about investing for long term. You need to think about an emergency fund, and you need to actually protect your income. Very important.
So that sounds really great, but I'm sure there's a single mother out there thinking, Sylvia, this sounds like a dream, because how do I actually cover all my financial bases on this limited income?
Yeah, it is a problem, of course, because you have less of an income than what you had before. It all comes down to budgeting at the end of the day. So budgeting is often this like old-fashioned thing that we think we don't really have to do. We have all these tools and apps and spreadsheets, and it's actually, you can just take a piece of paper and a pen and jot down what's coming in and where's it going. There's either that or you just manage your money haphazardly. You earn your salary and you just spend and you hope it lasts, kind of thing. A lot of people actually operate like that. But it comes down to budgeting. And if you are concerned that you actually can't cover all your bases, then you can try to turn your budget on its head. So instead of starting, we always say to people, start with like the rent and the food and the school fees and all of those things. Turn it on its head and say, I want to put away, let's say, 300 Rand a month towards my emergency fund. It's the first item. I want to put away, let's say, 1,000 Rand a month towards retirement. That's the second item. And then you list everything. And that's the only way to do it. And through that exercise and that discipline, you should be able to then juggle things so that you can meet at least most of your goals and most of your expenses.
I think that's a good way of looking at it, turning it on its head, because I think often what happens is we kind of leave the leftovers and see how much of the leftovers we can actually invest. And when we try and make ends meet at the end of the month, we're like, actually, we need to cut retirement or we need to cut savings this month. So that's a really good point.
Yeah, because you can't eat a retirement plan, let's be honest. If there's no groceries in a cupboard. And there's a whole discussion one can have around that, but in terms of just trimming your expenses. But certain things are crucial. And for me, putting money aside for old age and an emergency fund is just as crucial as actually having money for groceries, because you need to create your financial security, particularly as a single parent.
And grow your wealth as well.
Absolutely, yeah.
Sylvia, are there any specific coping mechanisms a single mother could employ from an emotional perspective or financial perspective?
I think for me, the first thing, Bronwyn, is to face your realities. So particularly if you've come through a divorce or a situation like that, don't live in this kind of could have, would have, should have world. Maybe that's what I had. That's the lifestyle I had. If you can't afford it now, don't go into debt to try and maintain it. Be realistic. Trim your car if you have to. Drive a cheaper car. Move to cheaper accommodation. Trim the clothing accounts. You have to adjust your lifestyle. So that's the first thing, is deal in realities. I think also support systems. So often there's families that are support systems. If that is available, make use of that. A lot of single moms have that available. A lot don't. But if you've got it, make use of that. And then also maintenance, child support. A lot of women find themselves in a very vulnerable financial position because their ex-husbands or their partners are not paying what they should be paying. Don't accept it lying down. Go to the maintenance court. Use the resources available. There's a lot of support out there.
That's a really good point. I think that sometimes people accept their situation and accept that this is what I have to deal with now, and they don't realize that there are resources available that they could actually tap into.
Yeah, and it becomes a hassle sometimes. You know what I mean? It's a hassle to keep going to the maintenance court. It's a hassle. But actually, if it's worth 1,000 or 2,000 or 3,000 Rand a month, that can make the difference in your budget. Do it. Don't just leave it. Don't just leave it because it's too much of a hassle.
Yeah, because it's too much work.
Yeah.
Sylvia, as a single mother yourself and having been through the process as well, what are some of the biggest lessons you've learned when having a conversation with your children about money or the state of the finances in the household now that you're a single mother?
I think the thing is that I was fortunate when I got divorced, my financial situation actually improved. Okay, which is unusual, but it did. In many cases, that's not the case. So, but there were still, children are children and they mix with other kids and they see things on social media and whatever. So there is still a lot of that, I want this or I want that. I remember my son actually, he was in high school and he came home, it was the school holidays, and he came home and he said, oh, so-and-so is going to Greece for the holidays and this one's going to London to visit family. Like, why don't we ever go overseas? And I actually sat him down and I got real with him. I said to him, you know what? This is how we live. This is what I provide for you. This is the lifestyle we live. There are many people that have far less than that. So it just created that perspective. But I think, when kids are smaller, I don't believe in saying to children, we don't have money for that. Because I think it can also create a feeling of inadequacy. We're less than other people. Why haven't we got? So I've always tried to turn those conversations into a positive. If you want something, let's see how we can save towards it. Or maybe you will get it at Christmas time or on your birthday. If the child is older, you can actually show them the budget. You can be honest. And it's a great opportunity to actually teach them money lessons and money values. That stuff doesn't just happen. You don't just get. You have to save for it. You have to work towards it. So I think those honest conversations are important, but it's how you frame it. It's not a case of we don't have an, end of story. Use it as a learning opportunity.
I love that. I love the fact that it's a good opportunity to teach some money lessons. And just for kids to get an understanding that money doesn't fall off trees and we have to work towards goals and try and attain those goals, which I think is invaluable. I'm going to ask the big question, which I'm sure all the single mothers are out there and waiting for me to ask. Do you have any practical advice or any practical tips that will help a single mother's money stretch just a little bit further?
The one thing I absolutely love are loyalty points, I must be honest. Now, they're everywhere, you know what I mean? And they're whatever, the retailers, the banks. I believe in storing those up. When we talk about like Christmas or birthdays or times often when you can feel quite guilty, use those loyalty points, store them up for those times when you actually, when you need to spoil, when you need to spend a bit of extra money. I also think don't, and I want to touch on the debt issue and the guilt, because there can be a lot of that. You cannot divorce money and emotions. They're very closely interwoven. There could be a lot of guilt. There could be a lot of, I want to keep up with ex-husband because he can provide this, he can provide that. Don't fall into those traps. It's really about just providing what you can provide. And I think the very important thing is that children need love. And, it's memories that are important, not stuff. So toys break and go out of fashion. Gimmicks are, there's something new next year. All of that stuff is actually just irrelevant at the end of the day. If you actually should just focus on what the child really wants and needs, and that's the love and the nurturing. You can take them to the park for a picnic. They'll love that just as much as some fancy outing. So that's what I really want to say is spend what you have, work with your reality, and focus on that quality time. I mean, it's an old phrase, quality time, but focus on that and make memories with your children and be proud. Really be proud of your family and your home environment that you've created, and don't feel lesser to anyone else because you aren't. Not at all at the end of the day.
I think that's a great way to end our very important conversation. Thank you so much for joining us today, Sylvia.
Thanks, Ronwin. It was lovely to be here.
Thank you so much for watching and for joining 91's Women in Investing series. We hope that the practical advice and tips you've received today will help you to take one step closer to your financial goal.